In this video, I'm going to go over the solutions to the 2024 SQA National 5 Maths Exam Paper 2. Here's question 1. Dougie pays £460 for a new laptop. It's expected that the value of the laptop will depreciate by 26% each year. Calculate the expected value of Dougie's laptop after 3 years. Okay, we can say 26% depreciation means that the value at the end of each year is 74%. How do I get that? Well, if we start with 100% and we depreciate by 26%, we just take away 26 from 100 and that gives you 74%. We want to find the value after 3 years. So we're going to get expected value after 3 years is the amount you start with multiplied by 74% to the power of 3. We use a calculator for this. So what we do is we say 460 multiplied by, make a bracket, make a fraction, and then it's 74, come down, 100, go to the right, close the bracket, and then raise to the power 3. Now there's the answer, it's £186.40304. To nearest penny, it will just be 186.40. So the final answer is £186.40 to the nearest penny. That's worth 3 marks. Question 2. An ant colony occupies an area of 250 hectares. There's an average of 1.22 times 10 to the power 6 ants per hectare. Calculate the number of ants in the colony and give your answer in scientific notation. So we know that per hectare means for every hectare. We don't have 1 hectare, we've got 250. So we will say the number of ants in the colony will be the average per hectare multiplied by the number of hectares. So we've got that from the first two parts, 1.22 times 10 to the power 6 is the average, and number of hectares is 250. Again, let's use a calculator for this. So we say 1.22 multiplied by 10 to the power 6, go to the right and then multiply by 250. Now this what we get this long number. So let's write that number down. Now this is 305 million. We want it in scientific notation, so we've got to put the point here. Now if we go to the right, we'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to be 3.05 times 10 to the power 8. And that's worth 2 marks. Question 3 shows a triangle ABC with the 3 sides given. So small a is 34, small b is 18, and small c is 25. We want to find the angle. So this is the cosine rule, and that's given on the formula sheet. So the cosine of A is b squared plus c squared, take away a squared over 2bc. We know the values of A, B and C from the triangle, and we just replace them. And that's what we get. Now let's work out this right hand side with a calculator. So we just make a fraction. We go 18 squared plus 25 squared, and then take away 34 squared, come down, and then divide by 2 times 18 by 25. Now we got a negative number, we got a negative fraction, so let's just continue and see what we say then. So the cosine is negative 23 over 100. So we've got a negative value for the cosine, so we've got to use the cast diagram. We know that cosine is positive there and there, so it's going to be negative here and here. Now, we have a triangle. We can't have an angle bigger than 180 degrees, so we can take away this one here. That's not going to happen. So it can't be in quadrant 3. It must be in quadrant 2. So to get the answer, it's going to be 180 take away the cosine, the inverse cosine of this fraction with a positive number. So let's get the calculator out and let's do that. So we're going to say 180 take away shift cosine, that's inverse cosine, make a fraction, 23, come down, 100, and go to the right, close the bracket, press equals, and you get 103.29 degrees. Okay, so that's going to be the answer. Let's just take it to the nearest degree, and we get 103 degrees to the nearest degree. Now, you could get this on the calculator by taking the inverse cosine of this number here, and you'll still get the same answer. Let's just show you this. So I can go shift cosine, and then I can use make a bracket. Sorry, no, the bracket's there, sorry. Put a negative sign, make a fraction, and then put the numbers in, 23, come down 100, and then go to the right. Now, if you press equals now, it goes straight to the answer. You don't have to take it away from 180. It gives you the answer that you want. So you could have done it that way, but the answer is 103 degrees to the nearest degree. Okay, next question. We want to solve this algebraically. It's an inequation because we have a less than sign here. So the first thing we do is we have the inequation. We multiply the first bracket by 5. The two terms are there and there. What do we get in the next step? 5x take away 10. That's just multiplying out the bracket. Now, I always take the x's to the side where we have more x's. We've got 5x there, 7x there. I'm going to move the 5x over here, and all the numbers will go to the left. So what do we get? Negative 10 doesn't move. Positive 4 doesn't move. 8 has come across, so it has to become take away 8. 7x doesn't move, but 5x comes over and it becomes take away 5x. Now, to work out this, I always do the negatives together. Negative 10, take away 8 is negative 18, it's more negative, and then you add 4, so that's going to be negative 14, and of course 7x take away 5x is 2x. Divide everything by 2 to get x, so that'll be negative 7 is less than x, but then let's write down x first and say x is greater than negative 7, and that's worth 3 marks. Okay, here's question 5. This year the cost of Charlie's car insurance is £278.40. This is an increase of 16% on last year's cost. We want to calculate the cost of the insurance last year. So we want the cost last year, that's going to be 100%. And what's happened is it's gone up by 16% and it's become this number. So we can say that 116% represents this amount of money. Now we want 100%, so it's going to be less. So it's going to say 100% will represent, put 100 over 116, put the small number over the big number and multiply it by this. Let's get a calculator out to do that. What we get, make a fraction, 100, come down, 116. Go to the right, multiply by 278, 40. Go to, and then equals. The answer is going to be £240. So that's going to be the answer, £240 exactly. Now, we can check this answer. How can we check it? Let's go back to the calculator. We can check this by doing this. We can say, start with what it was, what it is now, 270.40. Let's take away 240, and that means the increase is going to be £38.40. Now, if we divide that by the original 240, divide it by 240, and then multiply it by 100, we will get the percentage. If we do that, it should be 16. There it is, it's 16, and that's in the question, so we know that we are right. Okay then. Next question. We want to factorise this expression in part A, and then we want to simplify. Hence means use the answer for this here, and then we simplify this second fraction. So the first one is, to factorise it, you just take a common factor, y comes to the front, y times y gives you y squared, so it's a y here, and y times 6 gives you 6y, so it's a 6 there. That's 1 mark. Now it says, hence simplify this, so we can change the top into this expression here, the factorised version, so it's going to be y over y minus 6. Now the denominator is a quadratic, Because we've got a y minus 6 there, it looks like we can put a y minus 6 there and then work out what this is going to be. This has to be a minus and a plus. Why? Because the two numbers must multiply to give a minus. And the only way you can do it is go a minus times a plus or a plus times a minus. So let's just work it out. They must multiply to give 18 and add to give negative 3. The two answers are negative 6 and 3. Check it out. Negative 6 times positive 3 gives you the negative 18, and then negative 6 plus 3 gives you negative 3. Now, these two things are the same. They can cancel out. Okay, they can cancel out. And then we're left with y on the top and then y plus 3 on the bottom. And that's worth 2 marks. Altogether, 3 marks for question 6. Next question. We have a paperweight and it's a cuboid. And inside this we have a hemisphere. It says it's red glass, surrounded by clear glass. So, and there's the information, all the dimensions are there. We want to calculate the volume of clear glass in the paperweight. So to do this, we've got to say the volume of the clear glass will be the volume of the cuboid, take away volume of a hemisphere. Now we're given the volume of a sphere on the formula sheet. It says it's 4/3, 4/3 pi r cubed. A hemisphere is half of that. If you half 4/3, you get 2/3. So we can then just work out what the law is. We get 2/3 pi r cubed for the hemisphere, and a cuboid is length times width times height. Now we've got the information here. That's the length, that's the width, that's the height. Now we want the radius. The radius, of course, is not this number. That's the diameter. It tells you that here. Diameter is 6. We want the radius, so radius is 3. We'll put all the numbers into this, so we get 7 times 7 times 4, take away 2/3 of pi, and it's 3 to the power 3 because the radius was 3. Let's get a calculator out for this. And we can just do it all at once. And we can say, make a bracket, do the same as that. 7 times 7 times 4. Close the bracket and then take away, make a fraction. 2, come down, 3, go to the right, shift pi, there's pi, and then make a bracket and then go 3, close the bracket to the power 3. And then go to the right and then press equals. Now there's the answer. It's 139.451. Let's just write that number down. 139.451 and more numbers, but we want two significant figures. That means you start with the first two numbers and then you round it off. So you're going to say 130, no, it's a 9 after it, so the answer is going to be 140, and it's just two significant figures, and the unit has to be cubic centimetres because we wanted a volume, and that's worth 4 marks. Okay, question 8 says solve the equation 3x squared plus 8x plus 1. Give your answers correct to 2 decimal places. As soon as you see that, you're going to use the quadratic formula because this is a quadratic equation. So we do the roots of this quadratic equation. The general one, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, are given by this. Now we need to find a, b and c. A is 3, b is 8 and c is 1. So let's write that down. A is 3, b is 8 and c is 1. Let's put them into the expression here for x. We get that. Now what we need to do also is, because we want to show working as we go along, we don't want to do everything on the calculator, we must show some working. I work out this part here. Now this part is 8 squared, that's 64. That's going to be 12. 64 take away 12 is 52. So you should write that down. Now this is when you use your calculator. There's going to be two answers, by the way, because it's plus and minus. The plus, root 52, comes from the first part, and then you take away root 52 on the top to get the second part. Let's do this with a calculator now. So let's do the first part here. We've got make a fraction, and then negative 8 plus root 52. Come down, and it's 2 times 3 is 6 on the bottom. So we get one answer is 2 decimal places, so we've got to go SD. Now 2 decimal places will take you to negative 0.13. So in a minute I'll write that down, but let's do the next one. Let's go back now. Let's go back to the question and put a negative in. So let's just go back through the question, delete that, put a takeaway in there, and then come in to the right, and then press equals. The second answer, again, you've got to change it into an SD, so decimal, negative 2.5. Now it's 535. You've got to be careful. It's negative 2.54. So your two answers are going to be negative 0.13 and negative 2.54, and both of these are correct to 2 decimal places, 3 marks. The next question is change the subject of this formula to D. So let's just write down the formula. F's on the left hand side. Now I'm just going to swap. Everything on the left is going to go to the right, everything on the right is going to go to the left, and that's what I get. So now I've achieved part of my goal, which is to get D on the left and something else on the right. The next step is to multiply everything by E. That will leave D, 2D plus 3 equals EF. We don't want the 3 there. We want to get rid of the 3 before because it's not related to D, so we take it over by subtracting. So 2D will be EF subtract 3. And then we don't want 2D, we want D, so divide everything by 2. Let's make a fraction. So you can say EF, take away 3 over 2, and that's worth 3 marks. Next question. Okay, question 10 says, Karen buys a door number sign for her house. The sign consists of parts of 2 identical circles that are interlocking like this. AB is a chord, and we know it's 15, and the radius of each of the 2 circles is 10 centimeters. So we want to find the width of the sign, this width here. So let me just go right along the middle here. That width is that one, the red line. We know that's a right angle triangle, and another one exactly the same on the other side of there by symmetry. So let's just bring the whole lot out, and let's put in what we know. There's a radius, that's a radius, 10, and that's a radius. Now this height here is going to be half the height from A to B, so it's going to be 7.5. And we're going to call that X and that X. Now, we know that the width is going to be given by 20 plus 2x. It's just all of this line along the bottom, so it's 10 and 10 gives you 20, and I can see 2x's there, so it's plus 2x. To find x, we use the right angle triangle here. We know the hypotenuse and we know the height. We want a short side, so we say x will be the square root of 10 squared, take away 7.5 squared. It's not plus because it's not the hypotenuse, it's a short side, so put minus in there. So all we do now is we work out the calculator this value here, so let's just do that. So we're going to say 10 squared, take away 7.5 squared, see what that is, SD, 43.75. So we're going to say x is equal to 43.75. So we're going to put this x into this part here. It's not just 1x, it's 2x there. So we're going to say the width is 20 plus 2 times 43.75. Let's go back to the calculator and let's complete this by doing what we see. So say 20 plus 2 square root 43.75 equals, now we get this number here that's got a root in it, so go SD to make it a decimal, and then round it off. I'm going to round it off to 2 decimal places, 33. Not 22, there's an 8 there, so it's 23. So the answer is going to be, the width will be 33.23 centimeters to 2 decimal places. Next question. We want to solve this trig equation. So we want to find x, and x has got to be between 0 and 360. So let's get started. Now we don't want the 1 because it's not related to x at all. Let's bring that over first of all. So we say 17 sine x is 9 minus 1. We can work that out, that's 8. We don't want the 17 there, so we can divide both sides by 17. And then we can say that x will be the inverse sine of 8 over 17. Now, we know that 8 over 17 is a positive number. When is sine positive, it's going to be in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So all we need to do now is to get a calculator and do sine minus 1 to get the first angle. Let's do that. There it is, right, so let's clear it and go shift sine, and then make a fraction 8, come down 17, close the bracket, come out to the right, close the bracket, press equals. So you got an answer of, let's round it to a normal degree, so it can be 28 degrees. Let's forget about the decimals. It doesn't say anything up here, so let's say 28 degrees. So we can then say the x is 28 degrees, or let's take it into second quadrant, 180 take away 28 degrees. So the answer is going to be 28 degrees or 152 degrees to the nearest degree, and that's the answer for 3 marks. Question 12 shows an algebraic fraction plus an algebraic fraction, and we want to find a single fraction in its simplest form. So there is what we have. Now the denominators are not the same, so the best way to do this is just to multiply the two denominators together to get a single denominator. So we get 2 terms here. This has become x plus 5, x minus 4. So we've multiplied this by x minus 4. So we have to multiply 2 by x minus 4 to make it the same. All of that will equal this. Now here we've multiplied x minus 4 by x plus 5. So we have to multiply 3 by x plus 5 to make it the same here. We now have a denominator here, the same as that one, so we can make a single fraction. We can say x plus 5, x minus 4 denominator, and we can put these on the top, 2x minus 4 plus 3 times x plus 5, and that's what we have here. Next step is to multiply out the brackets. There we go, it's 2x minus 8 and 3x plus 15, that's there. And then we just tidy this up and say 2x plus 3x is 5x, and minus 8 plus 15 is plus 7, and that's the answer for 3 marks. Question 13. We have a triangle ABC, and we see that the base is 22 centimeters, angle A is 40 degrees, and angle C is 30 degrees. BD is perpendicular to AC, which means that BD is an altitude or a height. We want to calculate the length of BD. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing we can say is we've got a triangle here, a small triangle, and then we've got another triangle, and both these triangles make up the triangle ABC. Now they share this line here, BD, which is a common height. So BD is the height of the green triangle, and it's also the height of the blue triangle. So let's call this distance here ADX. We can then find this distance by saying it's 22 take away x, because here's 22. If we take away x here, we'll get this length CD, 22 take away x. Now, let's look at the green triangle. We want to find an expression using x for BD. Well, BD is the opposite and x is the adjacent, so we can write down BD over x is tan 40. Now we can now find BD on its own by multiplying everything by x, and we get BD is x tan 40. We now go to the blue triangle and we say to ourselves, BD now is the opposite of angle 30, and 22 take away x is the adjacent. So we can write down BD over 22 take away x equals tan 30. We want to get an expression for BD again on its own, so let's multiply everything by 22 minus x, and that gives us BD equals 22 take away x multiplied by tan 30. Now, we have two expressions here, and they're both equal to BD, so we can say x tan 40 equals 22 take away x tan 30. Next step is to multiply the bracket by tan 30, and we get, nothing changes on the left, but we get 22 times tan 30 take away x times tan 30. We want to find x on its own, so we've got to bring x tan 30 across. Remember, it's negative here, so the next step will be x tan 40, which didn't change. This comes over, it becomes plus x tan 30, and on the right is 22 tan 30. Now if we look at here, we've got two terms and they both have x in them. So x is a common factor. Let's take out the common factor. So we now have x bracket tan 40 plus tan 30, close the bracket, is equal to the right hand side, which didn't change. We want to find x on its own, so let's divide everything by this big bracket. So we get x on its own equals 22 tan 30 all over tan 40 plus tan 30. Now let's go back. We can now take this back to this expression up here. This x here is now the same as this big fraction, so we can change that x into this fraction and then just multiply it by tan 40, and that will give us BD, which we want. So let's do that. BD is going to be 22 tan 30 all over tan 40 plus tan 30 multiplied by tan 40. Let's use a calculator for that. So the first thing we've got to do is make a bracket. On the top it's 22 tan 30, close that bracket, and then come down and be careful here, so let's open a bracket and go tan 40, now close that first bracket, that's the angle, and then we've got to go plus tan 30, close the bracket for the angle, and then close the bracket for the whole two things. Let's go to the right now and then multiply by tan 40. Multiply by tan 40, close the bracket, and then equals. Now there is an answer. It's 7.5244 and so on. So we will round it to 2 decimal places, and the answer is going to be 7.52 centimeters to 2 decimal places. And that's it. We have a rhombus, WXYZ, and the diagonal ZX is drawn. We have a vector going from Z to W, vector A, and Z to X is vector B. We want WX. So we can write WX, we can go, instead of going straight to X, we can come via Z. So we can say WX is equal to WZ plus or followed by ZX. Now we know WZ is going the opposite way, so it's going to be negative A, and ZX is going the same. It's actually is given as B, so we can just put that down. Now I like to write down the positive number first, so I'm going to say it's going to equal B take away A, and that's the first part. Now we see that this point M is the midpoint of XY. So what we want WM, so to get from W to M, we can go W to X, which we now know, and then X to M. So we can say WM is going to be WX plus or followed by XM. Now XM is the same as A, but it's only half as long, and it's also going in opposite direction. So we can say WX we got from there, that's B minus A, and it's going to be negative a half A. A goes up, XM comes down, so it's a negative, and it's half the length. Now we can now tidy this up now. We've got a negative 1A and a negative a half A, that's negative 1.5 A. So we can say B take away 3 halves, which is 1.5 A, and that's the answer for 1 mark for that second part. Okay, this diagram shows a sector of a circle, centre C, the radius is 12, and this arc length AB is 15. We want to find the area of this sector. Now the first thing we can say is the area of the sector is part of a circle. So we can divide it by the area of the sector by the area of the circle will be the same fraction as the arc is out of the circumference. Now we want to find the area of a sector, so I'm going to multiply everything by the area of the circle. So just move that area of a circle over and we get area of sector will be this fraction here, this arc over circumference, and you multiply it by the area of the circle. Now let's just put the numbers in that we have. Well, the arc is given by 15. The circumference, the formula is 2 pi r, and the formula for area of a circle is pi r squared. Now let's tidy this up now. Let's see what we get when we tidy this up. 15 over 2 doesn't change because that's just two numbers. This is on the bottom, pi, and this is on the top. They can cancel. Pi's will cancel out. I've got r squared divided by r, and that's going to be times r. So we have 15 over 2 is 7.5 times the radius, and the radius is given by 12. So to get this, we just use a calculator, and we say, well, we can do it in your head. Half of 15 is 7.5, and multiply it by 12, and that gives an answer of 90. So the final answer is the area of this sector is 90 square centimetres exactly. Okay, we come to the last question, and we want to express 3 cosine squared x minus 1 in the form a plus b sine squared x. Now we want to change this cosine squared into a sine squared somehow, and we do know this. We know that that's what we got. We know that sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Now I want to change this into sine squared, so I'm going to move this sine squared over to the other side. So cosine squared can be replaced by 1 take away sine squared. I've just moved this over to that side. It's a positive here, it becomes a negative there. So now, where I see cosine squared, I'm going to replace it by these two things, 1 minus sine squared. So let's just do that. 3 bracket 1 minus sine squared minus 1 will be what this is. Multiply everything by 3. Now this 3 minus 3 sine squared minus 1, you can say 3 take away 1 is 2, and the answer is going to be 2 take away 3 sine squared x, and that's it, and that's the end of the paper.